there was never that much battling, because if someone said, I like this better, it was generally a better idea.
Paul McCartney, a name synonymous with the evolution of modern music, represents more than just musical brilliance. He embodies the resilience, innovation, and artistry that have defined an era. His story begins in the aftermath of World War II in the bustling city of Liverpool, England, where his humble beginnings laid the foundation for a musical career that would change the world. Through his journey, McCartney faced countless challenges, profound personal losses, and a shifting world around him, each of which contributed to his evolution into one of the most influential figures in music history. From his early days as a young boy strumming a guitar to becoming a global icon with the Beatles, McCartney's path was paved with moments of both triumph and tragedy. Early life and the foundation of music. Paul McCartney was born on June 18, 1942, in the city of Liverpool, a place marked by the scars of World War II. In the McCartney household, music was more than a passion, it was a lifeblood. His father, Jim McCartney, was an amateur jazz musician who frequently played the piano at family gatherings, setting the stage for his son's love for music. In the small living room of their home, Paul would sit and listen intently as his father played jazz standards, the melodies weaving into the fabric of his early memories. Growing up in a working-class neighborhood, McCartney experienced both the vibrancy and challenges of post-war life. His mother, Mary, was a nurse who also shared a deep love for music, and it was her untimely death from breast cancer in 1956, when Paul was just 14, that had a profound impact on him. The loss left a void that would resonate throughout McCartney's life, shaping much of the emotional undercurrent in his music. Reflecting on his mother's influence, McCartney often cited her as an inspiration for several of his songs, including the iconic Let It Be, which contained the lyrics, "Mother Mary comes to me." Before this tragedy, McCartney showed early signs of brilliance. As a student at Stockton Wood Road Primary School, his teachers noticed his creativity and intelligence. McCartney excelled in artistic subjects, and his natural ability to grasp complex ideas made him a standout student. However, despite his aptitude, McCartney faced challenges at school, particularly when he began to openly pursue music as a serious endeavor. In a time when academic success and conventional career paths were the focus, his passion for music was met with skepticism from both peers and adults, the tragic loss and the spark of creativity. The death of McCartney's mother was a pivotal moment in his life. It marked not just the loss of a parent, but also the beginning of a journey that would turn grief into artistic expression. At such a young age, Paul struggled to process the emotions of losing someone so close to him. Music, however, became his sanctuary, a place where he could pour out his sorrow and confusion. In his teenage years, McCartney began writing songs that reflected the emotional turmoil he experienced, unknowingly sowing the seeds of the vast catalog of music that would later define his career. The loss also led to an unspoken bond between McCartney and his future songwriting partner, John Lennon. Lennon, too, had suffered the early loss of his mother, and the two young men found solace and understanding in one another. Their shared grief created a unique connection that transcended mere friendship and would become the foundation of a creative partnership unlike any the world had ever seen. The crucial meeting, McCartney and Lennon. The trajectory of McCartney's musical career shifted in a serendipitous moment on July 6, 1957. At a church fete in Woolton, Liverpool, McCartney met John Lennon, the leader of a skiffle band called the Quarrymen. The two were introduced through a mutual friend, and it wasn't long before McCartney's skill on the guitar and his natural talent for songwriting impressed Lennon. This chance encounter would set the stage for what would become one of the most iconic musical partnerships of all time. At first, McCartney was invited to join the Quarrymen as a guitarist, and soon after, Lennon invited him to collaborate on writing songs. Their chemistry was immediate, and together they began to explore their shared love for music. With Lennon's raw edge and McCartney's melodic sensibilities, the duo quickly became the creative driving force of the group. The band, which evolved into the Beatles with the addition of George Harrison and Ringo Starr, was destined for greatness, though at this point, no one could have anticipated the scale of success they would soon achieve. The Beatles. From Hamburg to global stardom, the Beatles' rise to fame was nothing short of meteoric. Starting with small gigs in Liverpool's Cavern Club, the band honed their skills and developed a distinctive sound that would later captivate audiences worldwide. However, it was in Hamburg, Germany, where the Beatles truly became the band that would change the course of music history. There, they performed grueling sets night after night in small clubs, pushing their boundaries and refining their musical talents. The harsh conditions and long hours in Hamburg shaped the band's stamina and performance skills, helping them become one of the tightest, most dynamic bands in the world. It was during this period that McCartney began to solidify his role in the band. Initially, he had been reluctant to take on the bass guitar after the departure of Stuart Sutcliffe, the band's original bassist. However, McCartney soon embraced the role, adding his distinctive style and versatility to the band's sound. His bass lines became an essential part of the Beatles' music, helping to create the foundation for their evolving musical style. As the band's primary songwriter alongside Lennon, McCartney played a pivotal role in shaping the Beatles' catalog, writing some of their most enduring songs including Yesterday, Hey Jude, and Let It Be. By 1960, the Beatles officially adopted their famous name and embarked on a journey that would forever alter the musical landscape. Their fame spread rapidly, first across the UK and then to the United States, where Beatlemania reached a fever pitch. Their arrival in America in 1964 marked the beginning of an era that saw the Beatles dominate the global music scene like no other band before them. The peak of success, the Beatles' creative revolution. With the global success of the Beatles came an unprecedented level of fame and influence. McCartney, alongside Lennon, took the reins of the band's creative direction, pushing the boundaries of popular music with each new album. The Beatles' musical evolution was a testament to their ingenuity and constant desire to innovate. In 1964, their album Meet the Beatles catapulted them to international stardom, and the band continued to release groundbreaking albums that reshaped the sound of modern music. A Hard Day's Night, 1964, showcased the band's ability to blend catchy pop melodies with emotional depth, while Rubber Soul, 1965, marked the beginning of their shift towards more experimental sounds. Perhaps the most revolutionary of all their works was Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, 1967, an album that is often regarded as one of the greatest in music history. The album's innovative use of studio techniques, complex arrangements, and introspective lyrics changed the way albums were made and listened to. The release of All You Need Is Love that same year reinforced the Beatles' role not only as musicians, but as cultural icons, advocating for peace and unity at a time of global unrest. Throughout these years, McCartney's musical talents shone brightly. His melodic genius and ability to create songs that resonated with people from all walks of life made him a vital force in the band. McCartney's contributions to the Beatles' success were undeniable. His vocal range, mastery of multiple instruments, and innovative approaches to songwriting solidified his place as one of the most accomplished musicians of his generation. The Beatles' breakup and McCartney's personal struggles. Despite their success, the intense pressure of fame, personal differences, and creative tensions ultimately led to the Beatles' breakup in 1970. While Lennon's outspoken personality and desire for artistic exploration created rifts within the band, it was McCartney's increasingly dominant role as a creative leader that also contributed to the growing tensions. As McCartney sought to explore new musical avenues, both as a solo artist and through collaborations, tensions with Lennon escalated, culminating in Lennon's departure from the band in 1969. The breakup of the Beatles was a devastating blow to fans around the world, and it marked the end of one of the most influential and successful periods in the history of popular music. For McCartney, the breakup also brought personal challenges. He struggled with feelings of isolation and loss, but he quickly channeled his emotions into his solo career. The release of his debut album McCartney in 1970 showcased his ability to thrive independently. The album was raw, intimate, and experimental, reflecting McCartney's newfound freedom as a solo artist. The Beatles' rise to fame, creativity, and innovation. As the Beatles' popularity grew, so did their creative output. The Lennon-McCartney partnership became the heart of the band's songwriting, with each member contributing to the band's evolving sound. In 1963, the Beatles achieved their first major success with Love Me Do, which began their domination of the British charts. Beatlemania, the fervor surrounding the band's popularity, quickly spread to the United States, and in 1964, the Beatles became the first international act to top both the UK and US charts simultaneously. Hits like She Loves You, I Want to Hold Your Hand, and Can't Buy Me Love catapulted the band to global superstardom, forever altering the landscape of popular music. The Beatles' music began to evolve at an astonishing pace, reflecting the changing cultural landscape of the 1960s. The release of Rubber Soul in 1965 marked a significant shift in their sound, with the band incorporating folk, rock, and experimental elements into their music. McCartney, ever the innovator, played a pivotal role in shaping the band's new direction. Songs like Yesterday, which featured a string quartet, showed McCartney's growing interest in classical music and his desire to push the boundaries of what pop music could achieve. By 1967, the Beatles had reached their creative peak with the release of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. The album was a musical revolution, blending rock, pop, and experimental sounds in ways that had never been heard before. It was more than just an album. It was a cultural statement, an artistic manifesto that reflected the psychedelic era in which it was created. The album's groundbreaking approach to sound, songwriting, and presentation cemented the Beatles' place in music history. The strain of success, tensions within. The Beatles. Despite their unprecedented success, internal tensions began to grow within the Beatles. As McCartney's influence in the band grew, particularly in the latter half of the 1960s, tensions began to surface. Lennon, who had once been the band's dominant figure, began to feel overshadowed by McCartney's increasing control over both the band's music and direction. The once harmonious partnership between Lennon and McCartney began to fray as their creative egos clashed. In 1966, McCartney made the decision to write Can't Buy Me Love on his own, marking the first major instance of the Lennon-McCartney songwriting duo working separately. Lennon, not to be outdone, responded with A Hard Day's Night. This spirit of competition between the two musicians would continue throughout their careers, driving them to create some of the most enduring songs in popular music. However, it also created an undercurrent of rivalry that would ultimately contribute to the band's breakup. The pressures of fame, compounded by the band's internal struggles, took a toll on the Beatles' ability to function as a cohesive unit. The sudden death of their manager, Brian Epstein, in 1967 only deepened the divide. Epstein had acted as a mediator between the band members, and without him, the band began to fracture. McCartney, determined to keep the band together, pushed for ambitious projects like Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band and The White Album. But personal and artistic differences began to overshadow their musical pursuits. The Beatles' breakup, a personal and professional split. In 1969, John Lennon informed McCartney and Ringo Starr that he intended to leave the Beatles, a moment that would mark the beginning of the band's official dissolution. McCartney, devastated by the news, made the announcement public in 1970, officially bringing an end to one of the most influential bands in history. The breakup was a deeply emotional experience for all involved, and the fallout from the split would shape their relationships for years to come. The tensions between McCartney and Lennon continued into their solo careers, with each man taking shots at the other through their music. McCartney's Too Many People subtly criticized Lennon, while Lennon retaliated with the biting How Do You Sleep, which featured the famous line, "The only thing you did was yesterday." McCartney's relationship with George Harrison, too, became strained during this time, as Harrison expressed frustration with McCartney's controlling nature. Over time, however, the relationships began to heal. In the years before Lennon's tragic death in 1980, he and McCartney rekindled their friendship, with their conversations shifting from music to more personal matters. McCartney later recalled that Lennon had said to him, "Think of me every now and then, old friend." McCartney's relationship with Harrison also improved in the years following the breakup, with the two briefly reuniting to perform together in the 1990s. Despite the fractures, the Beatles' legacy was ultimately built on love, friendship, and mutual respect, with the music they created together remaining a testament to their shared vision. Solo, career, reinvention, and success. After the Beatles disbanded, McCartney embarked on a solo career that would see him explore new musical territories while maintaining the creative edge that had made him a global icon. His debut solo album, McCartney, released in 1970, was a deeply personal work, with McCartney playing all the instruments and producing the album himself. While the album received mixed reviews initially, it showcased McCartney's boundless creativity and marked the beginning of his post-Beatles career. In 1971, McCartney formed the band Wings, with his wife Linda McCartney as a key member. Wings would go on to achieve great success, releasing hits like Band on the Run, which remains one of McCartney's signature songs. Throughout the 1970s, Wings became one of the most successful bands of the era, touring the world and producing several chart-topping albums. Despite facing challenges, including lineup changes and internal tensions, McCartney's creativity never waned. The 1980s brought new opportunities and challenges for McCartney. He collaborated with Michael Jackson on the hits The Girl Is Mine and Say, 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 further cementing his place in the pop music landscape. However, his relationship with Jackson became strained when Jackson purchased the publishing rights to the Beatles catalog, a move that McCartney considered a betrayal. Despite this, McCartney continued to innovate, releasing albums like Tug of War and collaborating with artists like Stevie Wonder and Eric Clapton. Legacy, a lifelong commitment to music. As the decades passed, McCartney's musical output continued to inspire generations of musicians and fans. His involvement in the Beatles anthology in the 1990s allowed fans to reconnect with the band's rich history, while his solo albums continued to showcase his growth as an artist. McCartney's resilience, creativity, and love for music have made him one of the most influential figures in modern music history. Today, Paul McCartney remains an active and beloved figure in the music industry. His enduring passion for music, combined with his incredible talent, ensures that his legacy will live on for generations to come. From his early days with the Beatles to his successful solo career, McCartney's influence on music is immeasurable. He is a true icon, and his music continues to resonate with fans around the world. Through his highs and lows, McCartney's story is one of an artist who never stopped evolving, never stopped creating, and never stopped believing in the power of music to change the world. Legacy and impact, a life defined by music. Following the Beatles' breakup, McCartney continued to build a legacy that spanned decades. With his band Wings, McCartney experienced continued success, producing hits like Band on the Run and Live and Let Die. He also delved into activism, advocating for animal rights, environmentalism, and global peace, much in the same spirit that he had during his time with the Beatles. Throughout his life, McCartney's contributions to music and culture have remained immeasurable. As one of the most successful and influential songwriters in history, McCartney's work has inspired generations of artists and listeners. His ability to craft songs that resonate with people on an emotional level has made him a timeless figure in music. Even as he enters the later stages of his career, Paul McCartney continues to tour, record, and innovate. His legacy as a musician, songwriter, and cultural icon remains unchallenged, and his story continues to inspire millions around the world. Through the ups and downs of his life, whether it be the tragic loss of his mother, the highs and lows of his career, or the controversies surrounding the Beatles' breakup, Paul McCartney has remained a testament to the enduring power of music, creativity, and resilience.